reduced to hypotheticals. I just got this incredible new job that already feels like a perfect fit, and now there's a chance I might have to uproot everything to move to another state in order to accommodate my husband's job hunt. It's almost comical in a grim way. A brand new career in which I'm finally starting to find my footing, when out of nowhere I hear that my husband is on the verge of being laid off. Just like that, the entire sense of stability I thought we had, at least for the near future, shatters. He's been told the official layoff notice is coming. His company has been struggling, or restructuring, or something along those lines. But I guess we foolishly hoped he'd be spared. Instead, we're staring at the possibility that any day now, he'll be out of work. We've spent the past few nights in tense, restless conversation about what's next. Should he apply for something local? That's the dream scenario, so I won't have to tear up my career just a few months after starting it. But if the job market in our field is better in another state, or if a truly amazing offer lands on his plate from somewhere else, we might end up packing boxes and heading out. The most surreal moment in all of this, breaking the news to my mother. All I said was, "Mom, we might have to move if your son-in-law gets a job offer in another state." I was bracing for her usual wave of advice or suggestions, possibly a tinge of guilt-tripping about how she'd be upset if we left. Instead, she nearly went into meltdown mode. "But what about my grandbabies?" The line was so jarring it actually took me a few seconds to register. Grandbabies. I literally asked that out loud. "Mom, what grandbabies? We have no children, you realize that, right?" She wasn't even responding to me, though. She was wailing as if I'd told her I was about to move to Antarctica, never to be seen again, with 3 kids in tow. The level of drama was borderline theatrical. Of course I had to remind her. "We're not pregnant. We have no immediate plans for kids. This is something we've talked about before, and I'd hoped it was clear." She's dropped hints. Well, more like direct statements. In the past, asking when we plan to have children. I always told her we're not at that point yet. My husband and I have said, not now, maybe in a few years for a while. I'm not even 30. It's not like my biological clock is pounding a gong, but you know how some parents are. They see their grown kids and they see the possibility for grandchildren, and that's it. They tunnel vision on that dream. The fact that we might be moving for purely economic reasons triggered her to skip a few steps. She made it about hypothetical grandchildren she's apparently conjured in her mind. She's fretting about losing contact with these non-existent kids, as though we're shipping them off to some new land. In reality, we have no kids. None. She's basically mourning a scenario that doesn't even exist. When I tried to calm her down, telling her once again that children are still in the eventual category for us, and that we're focusing on our careers, she had the nerve to say, "You can't keep putting it off, sweetheart." Putting it off. We haven't even begun. There's no official plan, no countdown clock, no baby gears stacked in a closet. I realized she was serious, basically telling me, "Stop delaying your pregnancy plans." I almost laughed. Like, does she not see everything else going on in my life? I literally just started a new job that specialized to our state. My husband might lose his job, our finances could be in flux, and she wants me to be pregnant right now. The frustration was intense. There's something so reductive about her angle, as if my entire purpose is to produce grandchildren. She has rarely shown interest in the rest of my life, my work, my aspirations, except in how they might lead to kids. I felt both irritated and sad. Irritated because it's classic familial pressure about procreation, this assumption that I owe them grandchildren. Sad because I do love my mother, but I hate feeling reduced to an incubator for potential offspring. Also, the emotional whiplash of my husband's job crisis is enough stress for now, without adding parental guilt about hypothetical children. I left that phone call feeling more anxious than ever. I'd rung her up hoping for a bit of moral support about the tough choices we might have to make. Perhaps a suggestion or two on how to handle the rent or finances if we do move. Instead, the conversation derailed into her paternalistic meltdown. "But grandbabies? It's not like we're definitely moving. We haven't lined up a single out-of-state interview yet. We're simply acknowledging that if an out-of-state position offered him the right salary or benefits, we might be compelled to relocate it. That's the reality of the job market, especially if, in our region, positions in his field are scarce. Meanwhile, my new job is fairly specialized. I used to have a more general role, but this new position is specifically tied to some local regulations or a state-run program. I can't easily replicate that job in another state, so I'd effectively be throwing away a lot of progress if we left. That, in turn, leaves me with 2 sub-options. Either we do a long-distance marriage for a while, or I give up the job. Neither is appealing. At least if we do move, I'd attempt to find a parallel role or some new angle in my field. But it might be an uphill climb, hence the stress, and that's exactly what I needed to talk about with my mother. The stress of maybe leaving behind a job I love. Instead, I got a meltdown over imaginary kids. She said something like, "But if you move to some faraway place, how will I see my precious grandbabies? I want to be part of their lives." And I told her bluntly, "We do not have children. I'm not even pregnant." She acted like I was missing the point, as if she's looking at the future she's conjured. She actually said, "Yes, but eventually you'll have them, and I'll barely get to see them if your state's away." My internal reaction was a swirl of, "What are you even talking about? You're skipping the entire next 5 years." She can't see beyond her baby mania. It's bizarre. I've always known she's had an old school perspective. Get married, pop out kids, revolve your life around them, and grandparents are central in that dynamic. But I'd hoped she might respect my path. Especially since it's 2023, people don't always have kids in their 20s. Not to mention, we're dealing with real-life challenges. Like we might have to move purely for survival. She can't grasp the bigger picture, only how it affects her potential role as a grandmother. The rest of that phone call was me half-heartedly trying to pivot back to the topic of my husband's job situation. She'd respond with half listening, then circle back to the hypothetical grandchildren. "But you'll want them eventually, dear." I said yes eventually. But not now, and that's final. I started feeling exasperated, so I cut the call short with an excuse about needing to go do something. Right after, I sat on the couch, letting frustration settle in. That was when I realized how worthless it made me feel. Like my entire existence in her mind is overshadowed by these phantom grandchildren. She's not even registering my new job, my sense of pride in stepping into a role I'd long aimed for. She's ignoring the real stress of possibly moving. She's just going on about kids. I felt so small. I've read stories from other women who mention how their parents, especially mothers, hound them for grandchildren. I guess I joined that club. The irony is that it's all hypothetical. We keep telling her, we'll think about kids in the future, but she wants them now, or at least the potential to see them. That's why a move out of state is so horrifying to her. So not only is she ignoring my timeline for having a child, she's fixated on her own timeline, as though my uterus is an open invitation for her to demand results. After I hung up, I told my husband about it. He half laughed. He's used to my mother's intense approach. He said something like, "She's been antsy about grandkids for a while. Right, don't let it get to you." But the fact that he's also the cause of our potential relocation, unintentionally but still, made me a bit resentful. If he has to move, that's not his fault, but it's also not mine. Meanwhile, my mother lumps me in as the one who's depriving her of kids by possibly leaving the area. It's not that she's singled him out as an enemy. It's more that she sees me as the gatekeeper for her grandmother fantasies. The whole situation is insane. I ended up doing some mental reflection. If I wanted to, I could stay behind. But that's complicated, possibly humiliating. Also, my job's brand new. I wouldn't want to tarnish my track record by trying to juggle a long-distance marriage from the get-go. And if I do have kids in the future, presumably I'd want my husband around. It's a tangled web. My mother's meltdown about grandbabies only added an extra layer of guilt. That's the kicker. These hypothetical kids who do not exist are being used to try to anchor me in place for her emotional comfort. She's weeping about them. It's manipulative in a sense, so I know it's driven by her longing, not pure malice. At one point that evening, I replayed the phrase in my mind, "You can't keep putting it off, sweetheart." That was my mother's direct quote. The nerve. Right. I'm not even 30. I have all the time in the world to plan a pregnancy if I want to, and she's acting like I'm pushing 45, on the brink of losing fertility. Even if I was older, I'd still have the right to decide. But there's a deeper condemnation in her voice, like she's accusing me of ignoring my duty as a woman. That stings. I'm a person with ambitions and a brand new career, not a baby-making machine. The knowledge that she sees me in that limited way disheartens me. Maybe she doesn't realize how it sounds. Maybe she thinks she's just being a caring mother who wants to see her daughter settled with a family. But from my perspective, it's invasive and undermining, especially because in this day and age, women have plenty of reasons to delay or forego having children. Financial stability is a big factor. Emotional readiness is another, plus the simple desire to enjoy personal freedoms. Another is that I literally have no idea how stable our location or finances will be after my husband's job situation shakes out. I suspect part of her meltdown is that if we move, she can't just drop by or be as involved as she imagines she'd be once kids are in the picture. She might see her own motherly role threatened, but it's not my job to fulfill her needs. If we do move, the hypothetical scenario is that maybe she'd see potential future grandchildren only a few times a year. That might be tragic for her, but again, those children do not exist right now, and I'm not pregnant, so we're looking at a hypothetical situation of the hypothetical kids we might have in the future could be far away from you, which is basically a double hypothetical. The mental gymnastics is exhausting. The day after that call, I found myself explaining to a friend that my mother's pressuring me about kids in the face of this possible move. My friend shook her head sympathetically. Sounds like boomer logic. They want grandkids ASAP, ignoring that you have a career to build and, actual issues to handle. That's precisely it. I'm not sure if it's generational or just certain personalities, but it's ridiculous. The friend advised me to stand firm, which I will, but it doesn't stop the emotional toll. My mother's meddling is a special kind of draining, especially when I'm trying to juggle so many unknowns. As for me, I'm proud of the steps I've taken with my new career. It's refreshing to feel a sense of direction, but now the sense that it could be ripped away if we relocate is tough. I'm also haunted by the question, would I give it up for the sake of my husband's new job? Or do I push back? If my mother's meltdown about future grandchildren is any indication of the general chaos that might ensue, well, I'm just bracing for a lot more stress in the coming weeks. At least I can remind myself, my mother's meltdown or not, it's not going to forcibly produce children or keep us from moving if we must. I'm a grown adult, but it reveals her mindset. To her, me as a woman is primarily about having kids. My career is a side detail. The fact that I'm extremely proud of my new job is overshadowed by her baby fever. That's the real kicker. I wanted to talk about my new job or her empathy about my husband losing his job. Instead, she hijacked the conversation with, but my grandbabies, as though that's the only relevant factor. At the end of the day, I guess I just have to accept that certain parents or family members never let go of that dream of their grown children, living in the same neighborhood, popping out grandkids every other year, letting them be the doting grandparents. They don't consider how modern life often requires mobility, chasing careers, adjusting to job market says, nor do they consider that we might not even want kids for a while, if ever. The entire meltdown was so exasperating that once I ended the call, I literally had to step outside, take a walk, and vent out loud to the sky, because it's so surreal to be asked about grandbabies that I have zero intention of producing anytime soon. In a way, I find some dark humor in it all. My mother is fretting about illusions, non-existent kids I might have in the future, while ignoring the actual present crisis, my husband's job instability, my brand new career I'd rather not abandon. The potential move. That sums up how detached she is from my reality. The incubator label is crushing. She sees me as the mother of her future lineage first, an individual with a career second. She's more concerned about her hypothetical role as a grandmother than my real struggle. Then, when I politely told her I'm not on the verge of pregnancy, she had the gall to scold me for putting it off. The nerve. I guess that's the end of my rant. I'll carry on. Proceed with daily life. Keep applying energy to my new job, and hopefully see what my husband's job hunt yields. If we stay great, I can flourish in my position. If we move, well, I'll find another path. I might be furious or upset, but I'll figure it out. Meanwhile, my mother can keep daydreaming about these imaginary grandchildren. Maybe that helps her sleep at night, but I refuse to let her guilt me into feeling like I owe her a baby. At the end of the day, it's my uterus, my life, my timeline. The meltdown is unfortunate, but it's also not controlling me, and that's the clarity I need to cling to.